Hi, my name's Keith Cooper, Northlight Images, and in this video I'm going to do a quick update on my using the Fuji GFX100S. I've actually got this camera now as my main camera for my professional work, my architectural work, industrial work, and I'm getting used to it. Now, I'm doing a lot of testing of lenses and stuff with it. With any camera I get and use for work, I do a lot of just going out and taking photos to get familiar with it. You can read the manual, which I do, and I'm sorry people don't like this sort of thing, but I always say read the manual. If nothing else, when the battery is charging up for the first time, familiarize yourself with it. Then after a week or two, see how your favorite settings change, whether there are bits you like about the camera, things you might want to change about the camera. There is very little about this camera I really fancy changing. Now, I'm testing it at the moment. Now, I'm going to do a video, which I'll probably do tomorrow, looking at the Laowa 17mm f4 lens. This is a G-mount one, so that's a fully manual lens that I've been testing, but I'll cover that separately. Here I've got Fuji 32-64 f4 lens. It is a phenomenally good lens. It shows up other lenses. It's one of the reasons why I'm very much looking forward to seeing what the Fuji 30mm tilt shift lens is like when it comes out. If optical standards, I've borrowed a few Fuji lenses off them, and I'm testing a few different ones. I have done in the past when I first had this camera to look at and then decided to get it. Settings, what have I changed anything from it? Not really. I've got the button set because I use adapted lenses quite often. I've still got the 35mm crop mode set to the button at the front here, the button on the side here that activates the level, and the button on the top here that pops up a histogram on the viewfinder. These are things that I do. I'm shooting almost entirely manual. Now with this lens, because it's got autofocus and stuff, I've been practicing with the autofocus a bit better, and for what I do it's very competent. Now, I'm never going to say that I'm a good person to test autofocus functions because I simply don't photograph nature stuff. I don't photograph sports. I don't tend to photograph stuff that's moving much, so I'm working mostly in manual mode, and I am still using the camera mostly in manual mode. Once you've got your exposure, unless the light obviously changes, there's no need to change it. And I've realized that the latitude I get in the files, now this is an image taken with the 17mm. I've got lots more I'll show when I do some coverage of this. But this one from underneath the bridge, the dynamic range in it, capturing the reflection and detail under the bridge, is very good. I would never have got, I could have taken the picture and 100 megapixel, 50 megapixel with this, the old 5DS, not much difference. But in terms of dynamic range, but then I could have got broadly similar with perhaps the Canon R5. This is just one of the reasons why I made the jump to use this particular camera. Have I any downsides for it yet? No, not really. Battery life is great. It supports a range of viewfinder and rear screen options that I like. Am I missing the fact that it hasn't got a full tilt out screen like the EOS RP I use? No, not really. Don't tend to use this much in photography, in non-studio photography anyway. I'm not sort of taking shots over my head with angling a screen. It's useful for that, but it's not something I do much. Have I set the custom modes on it? I've got 6 custom modes. I'm still unsure what I'm going to set them to. I have as yet not had any use for them. I use cameras very simply. I have a lot of manual focus lenses, so I'm used to focusing. The focus peaking on this, great, works fine. With this lens, autofocus, yes, I can focus with back button focusing here as well. Seems to work just fine. I'm not finding any issues with that. In terms of setting exposure, I'm setting the exposure from the front and back wheels here. Press the front wheel and I can change the ISO as well. That's all I really want to do. I'm sorry for anyone who's hoping that I'm going to explore complex areas of camera automation and all the different modes. I just don't use them. I use cameras in a broadly similar way that I have done for the last 25 years. Yes, I use different features of them and things like that, but the fundamentals to me are about understanding the light, understanding how the aperture you set affects the depth of field, if that matters to you in a particular shot, and how the shutter speed may work as well. Now, if I'm doing longer shutter speed, I've found that the image stabilization in this is very good. Even with my adapted lenses, as long as I set the focal lengths and the display and the adapter settings here, it works an absolute treat for that. No problems. I've now got image stabilization with my Canon tilt shift lenses that I use and other stuff. So that works very nicely. I've taken a few shots at 1/4 of a second leaning against a wall. They're nice and sharp. Can I see a slight bit? If I zoom to 100%, can I see a slight bit of movement? 1 or 2 of them I might, but what do I expect taking stuff handheld at 1/4 of a second? Now, I do quite a bit of stuff handheld, quite deliberately, which is one of the reasons, one of the buttons I've got here is to pull up the viewfinder, the internal level, because that just takes a bit of practice, how to get everything level while using that. Yeah, it seems to work, particularly if you're using a shift lens. That works very nicely with that. If I've got it on a tripod, I'm using this Rogetti L bracket. It has a space for the cables and everything. It works just fine. I don't use it with anything else. It's got some bubble levels in it as well, if you need some extra levels. Nice bit about this one is it has a little magnetic thing for a coin type for doing a tightening. Now I know about this one because I have for several years used the Rogetti L bracket on the 5DS. See, it's got the little coin in there. It's a similar thing. Works equally well with that. That works very nicely. Nice stuff. I use the Rogetti tripod that I've got with the geared head, but I've got other stuff about that. So there we go. That's that. Any minor detractions? Yes, when I started playing around lifting some levels with some images here, I noticed a few spots. I needed to run a hot pixel mapping on it, but you'd do that for any camera really. To have 100 million pixels and expect them all to be perfect is a little optimistic. That seems to have taken care of it. It was nothing noticeable. It was only when I started playing around really stretching the processing of images, pulling up dark shadow areas. That was really the only time I really noticed that. But run that, it works absolutely fine. Battery life, I've had no problems whatsoever. I have a 128 meg card, 128 gig card, I should say. Don't think a 128 meg card would last very long, even if recording JPEGs. But 128, I've not filled it yet. There's 2 card slots in here, so I have a backup card as well. No problem with that. The size of the files, yeah, they're big, 200 megabytes each, but you know, that's what you get for stuff like this. Disk space is relatively cheap. It's not a problem with that. Battery life, as I say, I've never managed to get the battery flat yet in taking it out, but it's USB charging. So I've got a battery pack sits in side pocket of my camera bag, and I've got a USB-C lead that I can just, while the camera is in the bag, I can just plug the lead in and I can recharge it from the battery pack. That'll keep me going all day long, no trouble at all. I haven't got myself a second battery for this yet. Something I perhaps ought to have just in case, just for things like this. But then again, unfortunately, I've not had that many commercial jobs in the time I've had this. I've had a few, but nothing that's really challenged it. Got some nice pictures, particularly some of the architectural ones I don't. But a bit more of the testing. This is detail from this, the 32-64. The lens correction that the camera supplies is used in the image processing. Now, I'm only processing these with Adobe Camera Raw. Now, several people have said I ought to try different RAW processing for this. Yeah, fine. Unfortunately, I don't have a copy of Capture One, and nor can, I really, unless it's astoundingly better, I can't justify it, the expense of it. I'll have another look and see, because lots of people have said I should have a look. Now, I have used DxO Optics Pro, well, not DxO, Photolab I've used a few times, and that's very good. The noise reduction is, as you'd expect from DxO, very good. So the Adobe Camera Raw does for what I need, but I can see potential there for changing to something else. This is straightforward. The correction that's applied for this straightens out everything, has detail right to the corner. This is crisp and sharp right to the corner, and as I say, it's this lens here which makes me look forward to when I get to test the tilt shift 30mm lens for the Fuji one, just from the quality of that. Now, example in processing images on a cloudy shot, there is so much dynamic range that you do have to be careful in how you process things, not to get halos and various other issues and stuff. Now, this is great. There's plenty of detail. I could bring up detail here. Now, I don't, although I do architecture, buildings and things, most of the buildings I get to shoot are pretty dull. They're industrial units and sort of shops and things. They're, any fool can take great pictures of award-winning buildings. It's when you start to get the more dull buildings, and I don't always get the optimal weather. So in this one, I've taken this one just for the sun's not shining on it, just to have a look at how I could process the details here. This has had very little processing on it at all, just brighten up the shadows a bit and things like that. It's fine. It's playing around with images like this and experimenting with images like this that give me the experience, so that when on a job I go out on a dull day and I have photographs to take and some, I can get good photos from it. So it's one of the reasons I do the testing. A lot of professional photographers really don't get that much of a chance to do what I'd call professional development type work. Part of my reasons for doing all my experimenting, apart from that I enjoy it, one of my reasons is that it improves my photography. It challenges me to do new stuff, and I'm always looking to do that. Now, another picture taken here, this with a 32-60, these are all with a 32-62. Once again, we've got heavy cloud coming up. I've got that much detail in it that as a source image to do something with, that's great. Looking up more detail, more deep shadow. It's the dynamic range of the images that I'm having to get used to a bit. Whereas before I might start to process an image and think, well, that's about as far as I really want to go in processing that image. Now I've got the option of going further. Now, when doing adjustments like this, I will try and overdo the adjustment and then back off to what I want. I find that over the years from using Photoshop with all different types of cameras and the likes, over the years I found it far easier to overdo the adjustments and then knock them back to what you want. It sort of gives you a better perspective. Well, it works for me, but try it. If it's not, if you find yourself continually nudging sliders up to try and get them right, try going over it and then drop back. Try changing the direction you're coming from. Another shot here, looking at a shadowed building. The tonal contrast in this is quite extreme. It's not my ideal choice of lighting if I was taking a picture of that building, but it's one of those things where I have to adapt to it and actually learn from it. So there we have a few bits and pieces of what I'm getting on with this. Yes, it's a great camera. I'm really enjoying using it. I've not found anything that's really annoyed me yet, which is good, because most cameras you'll find at least something about them that annoy you. It's robust, but then again, having just bought it, I'm treating it fairly carefully anyway. The lenses are quite chunky, but you expect that. That's part and parcel of what you get with this. Quite the lenses I used with this one were, relatively chunky. So we got that. So anyway, next time I will have a quick look at using this, the 17, and I'll also explore, I'll show a few more images than normal and show how I explored a new space that I'd not photographed before. One that I'd forgotten about in a very familiar location that I just never actually got round to photographing before. So just a few shots, but that just using the 17. So there are shots in it I would have taken with different lenses had I had them, but no, this was take the 17 out and see what you can do with it. One other thing, data color Spider 2 X2 Ultra, Spider X Mark II Ultra, I don't know how they're calling it. Just got one of these to test, so I'll be doing a review of monitor calibration at some point, looking at that on various devices, presumably this and probably this one here as well, and see how the settings work. This is one that actually does HDR screens and various stuff like that, but I don't have any high brightness screens to test that sort of stuff on, but that's something I'll come back to and probably do have a look at later this week. Anyway, I hope that's of interest. If you've got any questions, please do let me know. It's people's questions that give me ideas for things like this, and thanks for watching. Oh, and please do subscribe to the channel. Thanks, appreciated. Bye.